Well, welcome everybody. My name is Courtney Speckman, and I am the Director of Education here at the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park. Welcome to our virtual Buffalo Navy Week program with former Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus. Just a few details about the format of the talk before we get started. We will try to leave some time for a Q&A or just a brief Q&A at the end. If you have any questions along the way, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen and I will track those and moderate them along the way. We will be recording this program today. If you are having any technical difficulties or if you know anyone who wanted to join but is not here today, we will be recording this and streaming this to our Facebook page and uploading this video to the Buffalo Naval Park's YouTube channel. So please make sure that you spread the word on that. Our speaker today is former Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus, and we are fortunate to have a Buffalo connection to Secretary Mabus, who not only served aboard the USS Little Rock, the CLG-4, but as the Secretary of the Navy, had the opportunity to name the USS Little Rock LCS 9 and bring the commissioning of the ship to Buffalo in 2017. Although she couldn't be with us here today, Vice Admiral Lisa Franchetti has prepared a welcome video for all of us this morning. She is the highest ranking female officer in the US Navy and a native of Rochester, New York.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park. I'm Vice Admiral Lisa Franchetti, the Director of Strategy, Plans, and Policy on the staff of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, former Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus. Secretary Mabus is a native of Ackerman, Mississippi, and received a bachelor's degree, summa cum laude, from the University of Mississippi, a master's degree from Johns Hopkins University, and a law degree, magna cum laude, from Harvard Law School. His dedication to the Navy started in the 1970s when he served aboard the cruiser USS Little Rock and continues to this day. Secretary Mabus served as the 75th United States Secretary of the Navy from 2009 to 2017, the longest tenure as a leader of the Navy and Marine Corps since World War I. As Secretary during the Obama administration, he revolutionized the Navy and Marine Corps, opening all jobs to women, including submarines and special warfare, aggressively moving to alternative energy as a warfighting measure, building more than twice as many ships during his term than the preceding 8 years, and developing the Gulf Coast Restoration Plan after the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Secretary Mabus also served our nation in other capacities, both as the Governor of Mississippi and as the United States Ambassador to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia from 1994 to 1996. Today, Secretary Mabus is a senior advisor to Google Ventures, a director of 2 public companies, and is a lecturer at Harvard Law School and an executive fellow at Harvard Business School. He is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Explorers Club. And one fun fact, he has thrown out the first pitch at all 30 major league ballparks. I first met Secretary Mabus when I had the honor of working for him as his military assistant and saw firsthand his commitment to growing our Navy, fostering diversity and inclusion in our ranks, and investing in our allies and partners. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the former Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus.
All right, thank you. And with that, I would love to turn things over to you, Mr. Secretary. Well, thank you for being with us today.
Courtney, thank you, and thank the whole team at the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park. And I want to thank, even though she couldn't be here today, Lisa Franchetti, who was a terrific military aide to me. I got to work with her for a couple of years while she was doing that. Then she got promoted to Admiral. I visited her in Korea, where she was head of naval forces there, and then was fortunate enough to get to ride the USS George Washington, whose strike group she commanded through the Straits of Magellan. Lisa Franchetti represents everything that is terrific about our armed forces in general and about our Navy in particular. And since she mentioned it, and since she is the highest ranking woman in the Navy, we have to be a diverse force. And we're doing it not for diversity's sake, but because a diverse force is a stronger force. If everybody looks the same, talks the same, comes from the same background, thinks alike, you become very predictable. And a predictable military force is a defeatable military force. So I'm really happy to be here. As Courtney knows, my family and I, my 3 daughters and I, visited the Little Rock last Saturday in Buffalo. And I'll spend just a couple of minutes. I reported aboard the USS Little Rock when I was 21 years old. I went from being, a typical college student. I'd done Navy ROTC at Ole Miss, to suddenly being a division officer. Now, probably the most dangerous thing in the U.S. Navy, junior officer aboard ship. And suddenly I was absolutely responsible for 60 people. I became their confidant, their mother, their father, their priest, their rabbi, their banker, their psychiatrist. And the things I learned there, not only being a division officer, but being an officer of the deck, the things I learned about responsibility, the things I learned about accountability, the things I learned about teamwork and about doing something larger than yourself, I think I've carried with me through my whole life and my whole career. And I've been very fortunate in the jobs that I've held and the things I've been able to do. And I'm not sure any of that would have happened if I had not served in the U.S. Navy and I had not seen what it takes to be a leader and to be responsible for other people. When you're an officer of the deck, as those of you who served on the Rock or on other ships in our Navy, you're absolutely responsible for everyone. And if you make a bad decision, or if you don't pay attention, or if you lose focus, really bad things can happen, particularly if you're operating as a part of a strike group with the carrier or things like that. And one of the things that was driven home to my children when we visited the ship was, it's a dangerous profession. You're in a steel ship sitting in salt water filled with electricity and high explosives. And you have to be good at your job. You have to know what you're doing. And you have to rely absolutely for what gets done and for your life on the people that you're with. And so those are some of the lessons I learned on Little Rock. I still keep in touch with lots of people who served either with me or on the Little Rock at various times. My old boss, John Conjura, who was a Mustang and who lives not far from me today. And I still call him boss, and he still gives me, terrific, advice and counsel on lots of things, as he did when I was secretary and in between. And some of the people I served with as junior officers, Tom Peroni, who became a judge in Indiana, Bill Woods, who then and now rides horses and teaches horseback riding in Florida. And just watching those people and the things that they accomplish during their lives has been one of the great pleasures and the great privileges that I've had.
I think that's an amazing story, just in terms of what lessons people learn. And I hear that from many sailors who have served, that it's a lot about responsibility and teamwork and working together, because, as you said, it is dangerous, and there's a lot riding on all of the decisions being made. Do you remember your first impression of the USS Little Rock when you reported for duty, and when was that?
When I graduated from Ole Miss, I'd gone through in 3 years, so I did my midshipman cruise after graduation, and I did my midshipman cruise on the Little Rock as well. I only was on one ship my entire time in the Navy, I joined it in Gaeta, Italy. It was then the Sixth Fleet flagship. And I remember, because I joined it in Rhodes, I was flown from Rota down there. And I remember being sort of awed at the, I thought at the size of it, although, you know, later my children said, I can't believe how many people were on a ship that size, 1,000 people. But just the symbol that it represented of America, and the notion that I was going to be a part of this, and the notion that I was not only going to be a part of it, but I was going to be charged with a small part of leading the people on there. And then I reported back after the Navy gave me a year to go to Johns Hopkins for a master's degree, and I reported back in September of 1970, and then was immediately sent to communication school in Newport. The ship was in the Boston Naval Shipyard. And the things I remember from there was just how cold it was, because I lived on the ship, and it was in the shipyard, and things were you know, people were welding at 2 a.m, and they would turn off the power, and it was, you know, midwinter in Boston. But then when we headed out to sea early that spring, you know, just the learning experience of how you kept a ship of 1,000 people with, and we were, I guess the term is nuclear capable. And it was at the height of the Cold War. And going to sea, learning how to operate a ship, watching the captain, watching the XO, and watching all the department heads who I thought were impossibly old at the time, and they were probably in their early 30s. But watching how they led and ran things, and then qualifying as an OD, and then qualifying as a fleet OD or an OD underway with the carrier, being on special sea and anchor detail that every time the ship came in or went out. And again, as I said, learning how what you did affected so many other people, and how you had to depend on those people to do their job and do it well. And not just the officer rank, but, you know, the helmsman, the lee helmsman, the lookouts, you know, when you were on watch, the people in CIC, the people in after steering, the people in engineering that you know, kept this ship going. And it was, even then, it was not a new ship, because it was commissioned during World War II the first time before it was redone. But keeping it going, and how skilled everybody was, and how dedicated everybody was.
When you think about your time aboard the USS Little Rock, are there any particular memories or impressions that come to mind?
Oh, they're about 1 million.
Ones that you could share.
No, I mean, you know, we shot off a Talos missile in the Caribbean. We were down there to shoot 12 as part of our training, and Talos was then the largest missile the Navy had. The captain, after we had shot a couple at a drone from coming out of Puerto Rico, the captain told everybody who was not on watch at battle stations at general quarters they could come up on deck and watch. And there was a live warhead on this missile, an expanding wire warhead, basically razor blades. And we shot the missile, and it came back at us. It malfunctioned. And I was the tactical communicator, so I was talking to everybody during these things. And I remember just the chaos that ensued. But, you know, the great memories, meeting Princess Grace of Monaco, going into Monaco, and and getting to meet her and Prince Rainier, going to places that I only heard of. And on New Year's Eve of 1970, 71, no, 71, 72, being in port in Malaga theoretically for several days so that the crew could have New Year's off, and Russian submarines coming into the Med and being ordered to trail them. And they went to anchor in the Med, and how our band serenaded them on New Year's Day. And I think the main memory I had was just the people that I met, the incredible cross section of people that were on that ship. That I've been privileged to be a governor, to run for office, to get to know literally tens of thousands of people. But I got to meet people that I'd never met before or since. One of the guys in my division, Greco, who who was from New Jersey and whose ambition, which was terrific, to go back and open an auto repair shop. And growing up in New Jersey and learning about that, learning about lives that were completely different from my own growing up in rural Mississippi. So, yeah, I have about 1 million memories and an equal number of stories that, and I've told my children those stories since they were very, very small. And I think that they, seeing the ship and it's putting it into context. The last story I'll tell, the captain for most of my time was Gordon Nagler, who ended up a vice admiral. He ended up as N6. And he came to my inaugural as governor. And I kept in touch with him, and some enterprising reporter interviewed him and said, did you see this potential when he was a young officer on your ship? And Captain Nagler sort of paused, and he said, I always thought he would make something of himself. I just knew it wasn't going to be in the Navy. And I really wish he had lived until I became secretary. So, because he would have been the most astounded person of all when I was named.
I'm sure. So I love that. So thinking about your career after you left the Little Rock, can you talk a little bit about what happened next and how you carried your experiences from the Little Rock through to the rest of your career so far?
When I left Little Rock, I went to law school, and everybody, I couldn't get into Ole Miss, so I went to Harvard. And everybody in my class was talking about how tough law school was. And it just didn't seem that way. I mean, the law school was always in the same place. It never left. You could not go one day and you wouldn't be punished for it. You could wear anything you wanted to, and you could quit if you wanted to. All those things were very different from being in the Navy. And then I went, I clerked for a federal judge. I practiced law for a while, and then I went back to Mississippi, where I worked for a governor. I was legal counsel for Governor William Winter. Then ran for office. I became state auditor of Mississippi, which is a prosecutorial job. And the FBI and I put a pretty large percentage of county officials in jail in 4 years for corruption. And I ran for governor when I was 38 years old, and got it, and still is the biggest vote anybody's ever gotten running for governor, and was inaugurated as governor when I was 39. But as I said, the things that I learned in the Navy, the things that I learned on Little Rock, I've carried with me the whole time. That it's really important to do something bigger than yourself, to not have it all be about you and your personal advancement, to try to make sure that things are better when you left than when you got there. My dad served in the Navy in World War II, and one of the things, he owned the hardware store in a town of 1,000 people in North Mississippi. But one of the things he kept preaching was, you need to serve. You need to do something to give back. And I think that, I hope that has defined my career. In Mississippi, I concentrated on education because that's the one way up. That's the one way that that you get to that you succeed, or the one sure way that you succeed. And Mississippi was the poorest state in the nation. One of the things I learned at Navy was, every day I got up as governor, there were about 1,000 things I could do that would make things better. But if I tried to do all 1,000, I would fail at all of them. And you have to narrow your focus. You have to decide what is the most important thing, what's going to move the needle the most, what is going to make the biggest impact. And that's a lesson I learned from watching people and from experience on the Little Rock. You couldn't do everything, but you could do the very important things. You could do them very well. And then after I was governor, I was fortunate enough to be appointed ambassador to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia by President Clinton. Bill Clinton and I had been governors together at neighboring states and had traveled together a couple of times. And one of the things there that I kept remembering was, I'm representing the United States to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I'm not representing Saudi Arabia to the US, and to try to make sure that I kept true to American values and to our interests, and not to make sure that was foremost in my mind. And then I was incredibly fortunate to be named Secretary of the Navy by President Barack Obama. I had met then Senator Obama, had endorsed him for president in early 2007, had gone out and done 300 events for him in 28 states. I thought he would be a good president. And when I got a call from the transition asking me if I would like to come into the administration, I said I would, depending on the job. And they said, well, we've got some things in mind. What do you have in mind? I said, I want to be Secretary of the Navy. And they said, well, that's great. What's your second choice? And I said, I really don't have a second choice. If I can be Secretary of the Navy, that would be great. If not, I've got a pretty good life going already. But I always thought that being Secretary of the Navy and the history there was just it was the best job in government. I've had the two best jobs. The best elective job is being governor. The best appointed job is being Secretary of the Navy. It's big, 900,000 people, about $170, $180 billion budget when I was there, now over $200 billion, worldwide responsibilities. And you can make a huge difference in not only in the military, but in the country and in the world doing it. And part of what Lisa Franchetti said, I narrowed my things down to 4 things: people, platforms, power, and partnerships. Changed the way we dealt with our sailors and Marines. As she said, opened everything up to women. Oversaw the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, maybe one of the dumbest laws ever passed, and tried to make military service more flexible, so that we were losing twice as many women as men, years 7 through 12. And it was because they were having to choose between family and service, and people shouldn't have to do that. In platforms, built twice as many ships, more than twice as many, 87 ships, as the preceding 8 years. Power, changing the way the Navy and the Marines got and used fuel, energy, power. Moving to alternatives as a warfighting measure, but also because it has such an impact on climate change. And finally, partnerships. I went to 152 different countries as secretary. I went to all 50 states to first see the sailors and Marines where they were, but also then to see our friends and allies, because you can surge people, you can surge equipment. What you cannot surge is trust. And finally, this partnership with the American people. The Navy and Marine Corps, I call the America's away team, because when sailors and Marines are doing their job, they're usually a long, long way from home. To make sure that the American people knew what their Navy and Marine Corps were up to. I had the privilege of naming all Navy ships, and I named them after military heroes, after Medal of Honor recipients, after Navy Cross recipients. I named them after members of Congress who had been particularly helpful. I named them after states and cities and counties to connect the American people to particular ships and to their Navy. And then we have a tradition in the Navy of naming support ships, so oil or supply ships, after civilians whose values we cherish. And so I named a ship the Medgar Evers after the civil rights hero who was assassinated, the Cesar Chavez. I named an entire class of ships after John Lewis. Harvey Milk was one of those ships. Harvey Milk was a Navy diver and was kicked out for being gay, which weakened us in so many ways. Named ships the Earl Warren, the Robert Kennedy, the Lucy Stone, and the Sojourner Truth. So, I mean, that is a very long answer to a very short question, but I've had a remarkably wonderful, fortunate career and life, and so many of the things that I've carried through that life and through that career, I learned as a member of the U.S. Navy, and particularly as a member of the crew on the Little Rock.
I think that's a fantastic answer, even if it is long. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. What were your thoughts, and where were you when you found out, or maybe not where were you, but what did you think when you learned that the USS Little Rock was being sent to Buffalo to become a museum ship? And when did you first come to Buffalo to see it?
But, you know, the Little Rock, when it got retired, was sent to Philadelphia to join the Ghost Fleet of the retired naval ships. It's still there. A lot of those ships are still there. And I heard about it secondhand. I heard about it from one of my shipmates that it was being moved to Buffalo, and which was just a wonderful thing because it had been retired. Most Navy ships that are retired are either cut up or used as targets for sink exercises. And the notion that my ship was going to be there, my ship, I could go back and visit it, that I could do what I did this past weekend and take my children to see it, was just such a wonderful thing. And the very first time I came was to the reunion in Buffalo in 1992. And, you know, got there early so I could go on the ship, toured the, you know, just by myself, sort of wandered around the ship, and then spoke that night. I was a guest speaker in one of the early reunions. I'm not sure exactly when they started, but 92 was one of the earlier reunions, and got to, you know, get reacquainted with so many people that I had served with, but also people who had served before me and after me on the Little Rock, but had that joint experience. And I've been back a bunch. I came back in 96 because I happened to be in Buffalo for something else, and I certainly made time to come to the Little Rock. And then one of my very first speeches when I became secretary in 2009 was to the reunion. in Buffalo for the Little Rock. And then I came back. One of the last speeches, or one of the last trips that I made, was in 2016 to the reunion, also in Buffalo. And as you found out, I've given the park a lot of grief because when I went back on in '09, before I spoke as, like I said, I was a brand new secretary, and someone said, "Do you want to go on the ship?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, of course." And they said, "Is there anything special you want to see?" And I said, "I want to see my stateroom where I lived." And they said, "Do you remember where it is?" And I said, "Yeah, I remember where it is." And so we went on the ship. I went down a ladder, I went forward, and it wasn't there. And I thought, well, maybe I don't remember, but no, there's the Marine locker, there's the barbershop, there's the wardroom. And three staterooms have been taken out to put up a great exhibit of World War II Polish Army uniforms. And I've just given them grief ever since that my stateroom is gone. One of the great things that retired Chief John Branning, who now looks after the Little Rock for the park, said, send us some memorabilia from your time on the ship, and we'll put an exhibit up of that. And so the Little Rock now has my uniforms from when I was in the Navy that my mom saved. They've got my dad's uniforms from World War II, and they've got several boxes of stuff that I had carried through life from the Little Rock, and I'm looking forward to seeing those.
Yes, absolutely. And I hope that even though the stateroom is not there, that the Little Rock still feels like home when you come back to Buffalo and visit every time.
It does. It's really odd, and I know that the shipmates that I saw when I was there have pretty much the same experience. It's like decades just fall away. I was on the Little Rock exactly 50 years ago right now. In fact, we were in the Caribbean doing weapons testing 50 years ago right now. And, when I walked on that, when I walked up the gangplank, it was like I'd been there yesterday. Everything was familiar. Everything was exactly as I remembered it. And it was, as I said, like 50 years suddenly just melted away. And I was back. I was back as a early 20s person. I expected the 1MC to say, prepare to get underway. Now set the special sea and anchor detail. And anyway, it does feel like home. And and particularly you and the staff and the whole team at the Buffalo Naval Park just always make me, and makes everybody who whether they served on Little Rock or somewhere else, whether they served in the Navy or in some other capacity, or whether they're just visiting, it really make you feel at home and make you feel welcome and make you feel special.
Thank you for that. We appreciate that for sure. Why is it important to preserve the memories of the USS Little Rock and of the ship itself now that it is a museum ship?
I think it's important for generations that are coming now and generations that will come in the future to understand this part of American history. As I said, it was at the height of the Cold War. It was, the Little Rock was in so many ways on the front lines. We were always interacting with Russian, then Soviet ships. We were always in a pretty high state of alert and readiness when we were either at sea or in port. We were at sea a lot. And the way people lived and the things that ship did and the things that not only it, but also the Sullivans, the USS Croker, the submarine that is there, So what it was like to be in the Navy, what it was like to be serving in the service of America during those times, for the Croker, the 40s, the 50s, for the Little Rock, the 50s, 60s, 70s, the Sullivans, the same thing, during not only the Cold War, but also Vietnam and everything that was going on around that. And the ship has done this great job of putting together exhibits that are not just particular to the Little Rock, but Medal of Honor recipients from Western New York. There was a Medal of Honor recipient that served on Little Rock, who later was awarded the Medal of Honor for actions as a fast boat skipper in Vietnam. Things like that, things about the time when it was happening. I mean, I was on Little Rock when we landed on the moon. That's where I watched the TV feed of that, and that entire time in America. It was not an easy time to be in the military. Military people have learned now to separate the warrior from the war. And so you may not agree with a particular conflict that we may be in, but you don't blame the people in uniform. And today, because the all volunteer force, 0.5% of the American people serve in uniform. And most people just don't ever have interactions with people in the military. And I think this is one of the ways we can show that it's not just now, but how it stretches back to World War II. And then just the notion of the history of the Navy and how long the Navy has been serving our country. It's in the Constitution. In fact, I used to take great pleasure in quoting the Constitution to my Army friends, because it says that Congress can raise an Army when necessary, but it must maintain a Navy. So the Navy has been a bedrock part of America since the Revolution. I mean, both the Navy and the Marine Corps were founded in 1775, before we announced our independence from Great Britain, and have been an integral part of every part of American history. I mean, beating the best Navy in the world in the War of 1812, the British, and then through the Civil War, through Spanish-American War, World War I in the North Atlantic, World War II in the Pacific and the Atlantic, a worldwide thing of where the Navy was crucial at every point. We just celebrated the anniversary of the Battle of Midway, one of the great naval battles and victories of all time. And then through Yankee Station of Vietnam and the Cold War and our encounters with the Soviets during that whole time, and the fact that the Navy was called on to do a blockade of Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and how close we came to worldwide nuclear war, but how the Navy was a part of making sure that that did not happen. And we were able to make sure of that because of our capabilities and capacities that we had then, and then on up through the Gulf War and Iraq and Afghanistan. And, when I was secretary, a third of the combat air over Afghanistan, which is a very landlocked country, came off our carriers. And our pilots would go about a 9-hour round trip sitting in those small cockpits and to support ground troops. And so just seeing that sweep of history and just understanding that, which is, as I said, on the Little Rock, there are so many exhibits that are not just Little Rock centric, but explain different times in American history. And I think that's very important for the next generation, and the children, the grandchildren, and the generations that come. And it's really important to keep that history present and alive.
Absolutely. It's definitely a unique place, and we are very proud of it. Well, I want to be mindful of your time, but I thank you very much for spending your morning with us today. Are there any other memories or thoughts that you would wish to share before we wrap? Timing.
That was my cell phone, which from a good friend of mine called Spam Risk.
Mhm.
And the thing and I've said this before, but the things that I did in the Navy and the lessons that I learned in the Navy. I've told people that it was the most intense years of my life until I became a governor. Because something was always happening. You were always had to be alert and on top of things. You couldn't allow yourself to not be paying attention when you were on watch, to not be paying attention when you were in charge of something. And the intensity of that, but also the learning experiences of that have just been, and I said this earlier, all the things I've been fortunate enough to do, I'm not sure would have happened if I had not spent those years. And it was a short time. I think the people who were the most astounded that I was appointed Secretary of the Navy were the people I'd served with. Because I had just a few very undistinguished years on Little Rock, but lessons that I learned and friendships that I made, the character building things that you take with you are just irreplaceable. And today, because so few people get that opportunity, because so few people serve, and that's the reason I think it's so important that it's not just enough for people to say thank you for your service. They need to understand what that means. And I think that your park does that incredibly well.
Absolutely. And we do thank you for your service, and we thank you for being with us here this morning. We really appreciate your time, and it has been really interesting and just fascinating to learn a little bit more about your experiences. And we hope that we can continue to welcome you and all of the Little Rock sailors back to Buffalo and share your home back with you. Again, we know that this is your home, and we will do everything we can to continue that. I know we do have some members of the Little Rock Association that were with us today, so they sent a short message just to say hi and to thank you for being here. And as I mentioned before, we will be posting this talk to our YouTube channel on the Buffalo Naval Park's YouTube page, and along with a variety of virtual content from throughout Buffalo Navy Week 2021, which is mostly virtual this year for obvious reasons. I also encourage everybody to visit our website, buffalonavalpark.org, to learn more and sign up for our mailing list to learn about other events and programs that we have coming up. We are trying to stay as busy as possible so that we can share the history of these vessels with you all. We truly appreciate your support, and we look forward to welcoming you back to the Naval Park in person. Hopefully the next time we have Navy Week, we'll have more live in-person events at that point. And I just want to thank you again for joining us.
Thanks. Thank you, Courtney, and thank the whole team there. And if you invite me back, I will come.
That will be an open invitation anytime.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope everybody has a great day. We will be in touch soon. Thank you.